Making an update video here in the Supra. I have been making some changes lately to it. As you can maybe guess or see, wheels are off, and if you start to look in there, most of the drivetrain's removed. So making some significant changes to the car, I decided to pull the transmission out, which was a T56 Magnum, as well as a differential. It's a 200 millimeter differential with an OS Geek and LSD in it. It's actually a fairly strong differential, but in terms of differential, how differentials go, it's kind of the weaker of the super diffs. And over time, I didn't want to have to deal with if I chip a tooth on it, the ring gear, which has happened to me already, or something to happen with the OS Geek and LSD, then I'm out $1,500 for buying a new one. So I decided instead to go a different route. I picked up a Explorer differential, an 8.8. It was out of a 2008 or 2007 Ford Explorer, so it's independent rear suspension. I got this for 150 bucks. I needed it for primarily the housing. I also picked up a Detroit True Track. I had one of these in my TA. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. It's 31 spline, so it should be plenty strong for this application. And the reason why I went with the 8.8 is like I said, the Supra stuff is starting to get kind of pricey, and parts can become hard to find. So going this route, I'll ultimately have flexibility that if I break it, I just go to the junkyard, buy another housing, or I go buy a new rebuild kit, or I buy new gear, or what have you. So I've got the rebuild kit here. I also have a 410 gear set here. And then this is what helps me convert it to being able to work in the Supra. So this mount right here goes on the back into the stock location. And then over that, or should I say under that, you have this cover that has some load bolts, and that helps to overall strengthen the caps that connect inside the differential. So with this whole setup and everything, it should be plenty strong for what I plan on doing with it. But these are conversion axles for the 8.8s, so they go into the stock splines in the wheels with the wheel bearings, whatever. And then also I had to convert over these this speed sensor ring, so I had to take the old ones off the old axles. This is what actually works with my Pro-A5 traction control, so I have to have that so that will work appropriately. But these are level 5 drive shaft shop axles. I've got the other one over here, so the stock ones are back here, and then the level 5s are up front here. So these, along with that diff, should be plenty strong for anything I plan to throw at this car. So if I decide to upgrade the axles later, I could go with, I think they're 14 or 1500 capable wheel horsepower capable axles, but for now, this is what we're gonna do. So, and then the second part of this is really the transmission, but before I move into that, I'm gonna show you a little underneath the car. So as you can see, there's no drivetrain here, there's no rear end, axles are out, everything's out. One of the things that we had found is that I had to get this index plate back here, this guy right here. And the reason for that is that this bell housing, which is made by QuickTime, sometimes they're a little out of spec. They can be out of spec on different motors and so forth. So the input shaft going into the pilot bearing can sometimes be off just a little bit. And when it is, it makes it kind of tough to be able to get the transmission in and out. And then also it has like a side load on that input shaft depending on how it's offset. So when I took the trans out of this, I noticed that I had to fight the thing getting it out. And I even kind of remember when I put it in, I was fighting it to get it in. So when I did my measurements here with this dial caliper, I found that I was about 11.5 thou, almost 12 thou out of spec. And on the transmission, you should be, I think, within 7 thou. So I'm not too far out, but I'm out far enough that I'd have to fight the trans going in. And ultimately, I've got to get some offset dowels to kind of shift that center line a little out for me. So that brings me to the next part, which this is the main reason why I decided to do this switch. So this transmission in the foreground here is a T56 Magnum. The one in the background is the Magnum F. The only difference really between them mechanically is the tail housing. As you can see, the Magnum F is placed a little further back, and then therefore the shifter comes out and has like a 1.5 inch offset for rearward, and that makes for a much more crisp shifter feel. The Magnum F, which was the first revision of this trans, you know, is much more forward, where it actually connects into the transmission for the shifting, and therefore it uses 2 fulcrum points here to manage the shifts. And this is why I decided to do this upgrade, because although the Magnum F is a great transmission, I mean the Magnum I should say is a great transmission, the shifting feel is kind of terrible. And what I mean by that is, like, it's an okay shifter, but the design on it is that it uses all of these nylon nuts and with red Loctite and bolts to create 2 fulcrum points, and these are notorious for backing out and loosening up. And as you can see, these are loose, and this is the newest version that Suzuki came out with that red Loctited them, and I still have problems with these getting loose. I mean, they're loose, but the nut is not loose enough to actually spin off by hand, but it's loose enough that when you actually go to engage the shifter and move it side to side, it doesn't even make any progress or you know, movement on the front fulcrum. So like that deflection is just transmitted through all the way back to the shifter. And so if I'm in gear, like let's say I'm in third, the side to side play is ridiculous. I mean, that is, you know, it just results in a very vague feeling in the shifter, and it makes it less confident. So like if you're trying to do like a 2 to 3 shift really fast and you want to just push it straight up, sometimes you I feel like you kind of land on the fork in between and you don't quite get in the gear. So it makes 2 to 3 shifts really difficult. 1 to 2, 3 to 4, 4 to 5s are easy, but anything that has to go into 3, whether you're going from, I don't know, I was gonna say 6th to 3rd, but you'd never really be doing that. But 2 to 3 specifically is always a pain in the ass because of that vagueness in the shifter. It's a fine shifter. It's just the shifts on it are great. I mean, you can see it's a very short throw, but what does it matter when you're in gear and you can flop it around like that? I don't get it. So I'm getting rid of that. I'm moving over to this. Now this is the Magnum F. This is a Granis Racing shifter, and it's basically a modified stock shifter to work in Supra applications. But this shifter is much easier to operate. I mean, I can do it with a pinky, you know. You know what I mean? Like that's how I'm actuating it. I'm not even like trying to move the wrist. I'm trying to push it with my pinky and I can move it. That's how easy it is to go in and out of gear. And then there's no side to side play besides a minor amount in this because I haven't tightened it down, but there's like little to no play in it at all. You know, once I tighten that down, it'd be pretty damn stiff. But this trans overall feels just much better in the hands than something like this, where I don't even, it's much stiffer and harder to shift this than it is this. This is far easier, and I'll be able to tell once I get it in the car if this is definitely significantly better in terms of overall shifter feel. So that's the reason why I'm doing this whole entire conversion. And I figure since I got to get a different drive shaft in it, because it's got to be a different length, I just do one drive shaft with the 8.8 and then be kind of future proof for the most part in terms of this setup. Because you know, this older trans, it was fine, it worked great, it works great in everybody's applications, but this is really the way you want to go, especially if you're new, you know, to buying a T56. If you get a Magnum for, you know, like a Supra or RX-7 or an F-body, that's actually why these were developed. The Magnum F is for an F-body application, and typically the shifter location is a little bit further set back than maybe these type of locations, which are more in line with like a muscle car or, you know. So like anyway, that concludes it. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm working on right now. You know, I'll get the new trans in, I'll get the diff built, put that in, and you know, we'll see how the car does. I'm hoping that it'll make a much better driving experience. And like I said, the previous wasn't bad. It's just that when you're trying to drive it aggressively or fast, like there's a lot of vagueness there, and you know, it was easy for me to miss a 2-3 shift, which I should be able to bang pretty easy. But I figured with the new shifter, it'll probably make it much easier to get in and out gears. It'll make it feel a lot more confident when I'm going, when I'm driving it more aggressively or faster. And then also having the diff in there, if I, you know, decide to add more power to the car, I'm pretty sure that the 8.8 is going to be able to take quite a bit of power, because I mean, you see these Mustangs out there with stock rear ends and you know, with some axles, and they're holding up in the 8s. I mean, they're quick cars. So I think that that'll be a good, you know, starting place for me. I don't think I'm quite in the 9-inch territory, and I think that's a little overbuilt because for me, I'm trying to keep this truly a street car and not race the thing. But I mean, it might end up at a drag strip. Who knows? We'll see. All right, take care, guys. Thanks for watching me ramble.